You're listening to the Gulf Stream, where we talk to fascinating guests that want to make the Gulf of Mexico, and moreover, the world, a more sustainable and more beautiful place. Don't worry about getting bogged down in scientific jargon or academic lecturing. On the Gulf Stream, we break down complex ideas into simple, yet intriguing subjects that will help you be more informed and perhaps inspire you to create a better environment for all of us. After all, it takes people like you to make a difference in some of the toughest issues facing the Earth today. Welcome to the Gulf Stream.
This is David Yoskowitz, Executive Director of the Hart Research Institute for Gulf of Mexico Studies at Texas A&M University Corpus Christi, and co-host of the Gulf Stream podcast. In this episode of the podcast, I sat down with Greg Stunz, Endowed Chair for Fisheries and Ocean Health here at HRI, and the Director of the Center for Sportfish Science and Conservation, and soon to be the interim Executive Director of HRI. Greg and I have known one another for many years. We've worked together, fished together, and though it's bittersweet that I leave HRI in early November to take on the role of Executive Director at Texas Parks and Wildlife, I'm honored to be handing off the leadership role to Greg. In this episode, we talked about some of our favorite memories of working together, the early days of HRI and the HRI model and how that came to be, what inspired Greg's passion for sportfish conservation, and so much more. Enjoy. Well, welcome Dr. Greg Stunz to the Gulf Stream. Greg, you are the Endowed Chair for Fisheries and Ocean Health and the Director of the Center for Sportfish Science and Conservation. You also wear a lot of other hats, which we'll get into today. I wanted to start off our discussion about when we might have first met on campus, and then you and I essentially joined HRI around the same time. But do you remember our first meeting by chance at all?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I know we've been here for pretty much the same exact amount of time. We're the same age. Our careers just kind of converged here. But what I distinctly remember was our initial meetings, in the HRI conference room. But I'm sure we met, just on campus meetings and stuff. I don't know. Do you
I think I was in the College of Business at that time. You were in College of Science and Engineering. We were both assistant professors, associate professors, and I'm sure we had gotten together at various, faculty things.
Yeah.
But you were here by that time as well, right?
I just kind of started, kind of like you, we both started here as sort of junior chairs, and then sort of these research positions and worked our way up as it sort of mirrored the academic ranks that we went through.
Right. And then in 2008 is when Larry came on and then had both installed you and I as the final two original of the 6 endowed chairs.
That's right. Yeah.
And then when did the Sportfish Center come online?
Yeah, that was really around 2015, something like that.
Okay.
Dave, I'd have to go back and check the exact. I should know the exact. No, it would have been no. So it would have been 2011 was when the donation was given.
Yeah.
That's a Board of Regents approved center, so it took a little while to get through the university administration to designate that official center. So 2012 is when it really got kind of
when it started kicking
going.
off.
Yeah.
And then 2013 is when we finally you opened the door.
Yeah.
Okay. And then next year is the 10th anniversary.
Right. Yeah. So we're rolling into that. So
good.
A lot of excited things I hope planned for that.
Who originally helped set that up in terms of the financial support of that?
Well, the CCA was integral in that. We'd been talking about it for a long time. Larry and I had talked about even, during his interview process in the need for a center really designated to look after research interests that are needed in the recreational fishing community. And of course, the CCA was a logical partner for that because of their advocacy efforts in that arena. So it made for a good opportunity. Plus, we had already been doing research projects of mutual interest, so the fit was just there.
Is there anything else in the U.S. that is like the Sportfish Center?
No, not at all. That's like it of what we're doing. I mean, really dedicated to that, really working with anglers. Sort of one of our hallmarks is our citizen science work, where we really involve anglers in the scientific process through fish tagging and a variety of other methods. There's another research group on the east coast of Florida that does sportfish research, but they're not near as active. I mean, we're definitely it for the Gulf for sure.
The flag is planted here
exactly
for Sportfish Science,
and we've gotten well known because we turned out the timing was right or whatever. The citizen science in general was sort of becoming a thing among many fields, and people were just hungry for sort of a different experience in fishing. And so when you can build science into it, it helps you become a better angler. They really want to start our Sharkathon tagging, kind of kick that off with all the shark anglers tagging for us through their catch and relief efforts. And then that really took off. And now, of course, we're involved in all kind of different, collecting real meaningful science from everyday anglers.
So I want to come back to Sharkathon in a moment because what you all have done with that in particular, I think, speaks volumes of the Sportfish Center, the HRI model, but I want to come back to that in a moment. What I want to start with, though, really is how did you get into this? I mean, what was it that, as you were growing up, or maybe as an undergraduate, or what pushed you this direction? So can you give us a little sense of that?
Ultimately, what pushed it was just my love for the outdoors, of fishing and hunting, and just all things outdoor. And so, but I was first generation college student. I didn't know that, I guess sort of my family, you went to college and you became a lawyer, a doctor. That was kind of like,
so they're disappointed in you, right?
Oh yeah. So I was going to medical school literally up to the last minute. And this kind of gets back to the CCA.
So did you have an undergraduate biology?
Yeah. So it was straight up undergrad biology, very biomed focused, and so literally I was on the doorsteps of going in and I happened to open a Texas Fish and Game magazine at the time, and the CCA had an article about this graduate scholarship, and I was like, wow, you can get a graduate education, working on fish and doing sport fish. And anyway, so long story, I checked into it as a wildlife and fisheries department in College Station, and I ended up doing that. Of course, my wife was like, I thought I married an MP, not some fish biologist, But it seems to have worked out. Exactly. So, but it seemed to have worked out. So I ended up getting the scholarship. And so that kind of is what made that.
And that covered essentially your graduate education.
Yeah, it covered a large portion of that. And it was their first one. So it was a big deal. And that really came full circle when the CCA made the initial gift for the Sportfish Center, because I was a scholarship recipient. Now I'm in a professional role leading this new kind of growing Sportfish Center. So that really sort of sealed the linkages for our close relationships with that group.
And then what did you study? What was your dissertation work in graduate school? What did you look at?
So technically my PhD and master's degrees in wildlife and fisheries, but really on the fishery side, obviously. But I studied flounder for my master's degree, which is still a big issue and something you'll be facing soon too. And then for my dissertation, I studied redfish and their habitat needs for redfish.
Right. And what did you find?
Well, what we knew about redfish at the time, I'll back up on the flounder side. What was interesting there was it was very liberal bag limits, and there was really the upper size limit was lower than before they had a chance to spawn. So that was an issue. Of course, you don't want to be removing fish from the fishery before they've had a chance to spawn, but we had no science at the time to even know when that occurred. So that helped promote, conservative management to make sure that fishery is sustainable, and there's still some issues to deal with in that fishery. On my dissertation, I studied red drum, and the thought was red drum love seagrass for their nursery habitat. It was focused on what were the juvenile needs for these very, very small, inch long kind of fish and smaller. And it turned out they like seagrass, and we kind of knew that. However, I was up in Galveston area doing the work, and there's no seagrass, or at least very little. So it's like, well, what do they do in areas that much of the north central Gulf doesn't have seagrass like we do, here in the lower coast. And so it turned out they like marsh, and they like the edge of the marsh, which is important, the spartina, the smooth cord grass. And so that showed, what were some key areas you needed to protect for that iconic fishery.
So they like that edge, and they like in the little creeks and kind of getting back in there. And
exactly. They don't like to get too far up in the marsh, but right on that edge, pretty much, we'd say a meter on the seaward side of that marsh interface and then about a meter into it, so about 6 or 7 feet of area is sort of their main
where they
hotspot.
can escape into the marsh if something large comes along and trying to
they
eat
can
them.
run out and feed, but get back in the habitat when something comes along.
Yeah. And so you did your graduate work, it was at College Station, A&M College Station, but the field work was Galveston complex essentially. And then after that, where'd you go?
Yeah, well, I had worked out a nice deal in graduate school with NOAA Fisheries, so the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. And at the time, similar to our CCME program we had here, it was just a little more informal. It wasn't a organized kind of thing. And it was called a cooperative program. And the idea was they paid for part of your graduate education, and you worked as a FTE, believe it or not, in graduate school, which
so you have
be
federal
unheard
service.
of now. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm fully vested in the federal service from mainly service in grad school, which is kind of unusual. At the time, of course, that doesn't, they don't have that anymore. But anyway, the main thing was you were essentially offered a non-compete position once you graduated because you'd already been part of the system coming up. And so I worked for NOAA Fisheries in Galveston for a couple of years. And we loved Galveston. It was a great job, but I really wanted the academic realm and have a little more freedom to work on the things I wanted to. And so my wife and I did a major remodeling on a really beautiful old home in Galveston. And about the day I wrote the check to pay that remodeling fee was the day this position opened here at A&M Corpus. I was like,
it always works like that. It always works.
I'm
like
getting
that.
the position for sure. And so, it turned out I got the position, and then of course we moved down here, and that's sort of been my 2 careers.
And you arrived on campus here at A&M Corpus Christi and.
Yeah, fall of 2002.
Yeah, so
as a young assistant professor.
Yeah, you and I both on campus here at the same time, fall 2002, and then you and I show up here at HRI, and I think being the same age and the same background, and we had Paul Montagna was here at that time, Rich was here, Tom Shirley, I guess, and then Jim, And then you and I were the final 2. But, you and I being closer to age and experience and stuff, I think we just kind of, glommed onto each other. And I always go back to this because this is kind of the good old days when you needed help doing sampling.
Yeah.
Hook and line sampling, those days that we could actually go out and be on the water together. Those were special times to be able to do that.
That was definitely the good days when we actually had time to do stuff like that.
Right.
Now, fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, our crews get to do that. So we still very much active in there, but now our duties our time's been taken away from some other not quite as fun activities.
It's just what happens when things when you progress. And what was it about HRI that you said, I'm willing, and because it was a brand new operation.
Yeah.
I mean, still untested really in the model and the approach. And you were here on campus, you were in life sciences. You had a faculty position there, but then what was it about making this move here that?
Yeah, well, funny enough, that's interesting you asked that, because in the job announcement that I put in for, I distinctly remember it said something to the effect of, your research interests need to mesh well with the Heart Research Institute. And at the time, I didn't even know what that was, and of course, it was just formed.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't even think at the time, those founding, of course, they were just forming. The endowment was just really fresh. The building was not, literally, the building was concrete pad when I moved here. They were just beginning the building.
So that was that was in the original job announcement for the faculty position.
Yeah.
You needed to think about how you would interact with HR. Interesting.
And something interesting, my faculty position was the first one in like 9 years or something like that. It was just unheard of. Now we're hiring new faculty to keep up with our growth like crazy. So I was a little bit of a novelty because you hadn't had a new faculty in so long. The Heart Institute was new, and they were trying to navigate, well, what does that mean in the faculty linkages? So however that came about in the ad, it said it should mesh. It wasn't an appointment by any means. But anyway, so I researched more, and I funny enough, talked to some leadership of where I was, and they said, oh, yeah, Corpus is just got this huge endowment. There's a lot of things happening. And so anyway, that was all, I saw the potential that was here. And at the time, it was no startup, a lot of, teaching a minimum of 3, sometimes 4 classes a semester, it was a very, very different place. And so I took a big risk but I saw the potential and I knew I could work in the realm. Of course, I love this area for the outdoor opportunities and career opportunities in that realm. So anyway, obviously it worked out. And so HRI started integrating faculty as similar to what we do now, just with associates and those interested, and it kind of just grew from there.
Yeah. And so, same story with me. I was in the College of Business, but, my background, my dissertation work was around water and water economics. And I had, there was the Center for Coastal Studies here that Wes Tunnel was leading, and I wanted to get involved with them. I was hired on here in the College of Business to do environmental natural resource economics, but in the College of Business. And there was no connection to any of the natural science side, so I went over to this Center for Coastal Studies and started to make that connection with them. And then there was the first Gulf Summit, right? That was held here, and we had several governors from around the Gulf of Mexico and the U.S. there. You probably participated in that. Yeah. And that was really where my integration with HRI started to happen. Yeah. Informally at first, but then kind of come on in these research professorship type of opportunities until both you and I became endowed chairs in 2008.
Yeah, and you may not even know, because I was around just a little bit before you had shown up. There were some proposals going on, and I made a proposal about potentially doing like this junior chair thing. So I think it was probably a few months before I started really hearing about what you could do for the Institute. And it was really Paul Montagna who was sort of more the true believer in the initial beginning. Of course, now we all are saying, God, we got to get these guys involved. And there's this guy named David Yoskowitz. You could work in the water realm and all the stuff we do in the fisheries realm. And so we sort of, I don't know how that initiated, if it was, lunches or just organically or what.
Well, I think it was, that's interesting that you bring that up. And I think it goes to the importance and the power of having mentors and advocates that can see, because we're junior for us to be able to go up, you need to hire me, right? We didn't have that level of cred yet. Yeah. But Paul saw it. Yeah. Right. And when Larry came in, he saw it. And so they really, pushed for us saying, you need to get Greg in, you need to get David in to help complete this model. Yeah. And so I think that's, and now we're in similar positions, right, to be able to look out and bring people into the Institute that, mesh well with the mission.
Well, that, and, at the time, Bob Ferguson was the executive director because, he is I'm sure many listeners may or may not know, he had stepped down from the presidency. He was going to retire as well, but he wanted to make sure initially it was looked after and taken care of based on the family wishes. And so what's interesting, I guess, we've been here now through every director we've had. now we've each been, or we'll be each
That's
one.
right.
And so then, of course, he was never intended to be permanent, and he worked to help identify Larry, of course, who was immediately preceding you. So anyway, it's so I guess you and I have really been here literally from the ground up.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. I want to get back to sharks for a moment. Yeah. I know you. I know. How do you explain it? You say it's about 95% of our exposure, but only about 10% of our work, or something like that.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Of course, we love doing shark research, and that's what we get well known for. They're these charismatic animals that everybody connects with. We like it because they're such great ambassadors for the ocean. Because whether you're a little kid or further along in your life or whatever, everyone sort of has this fascination or connection with sharks. And so we can leverage that interest to teach people about why they should be good stewards of the ocean and good conservationists. And they don't even realize they're kind of learning, especially in schools too. The kids want to know about sharks, and you teach all kind of things through, how our sharks move and tag, from geography to marine biology to, you name it. But it's a relatively small amount of what we do, but of course, big big component. So
yeah, and a lot of all the shows that you've done on Discovery Shark Week and now National Geographic this year. On their shark
Shark Fest.
Shark Fest. Sorry, trying to keep those.
Yeah.
They're not official sponsors of the Gulfstream podcast, but
that's right.
so a lot of exposure through sharks. But I wanted to come back to Sharkathon. So if you could give our viewers and listeners a little bit of background on what Sharkathon is, and then really how your work and your team's work changed that model of what they were doing.
Yeah. Well, to really understand what that group has done very, very successfully, you kind of need to understand the history of sharks is that sharks have been really depleted, even in the Gulf of Mexico, but globally, but mainly because of the shark fin trade and the lucrative value of their fins and black market trade. I mean, they're selling for thousands of dollars for one fin of a shark in some instances. So it led to rapid depletion. In fact, even the federal government saw sharks as a underutilized resource and subsidized fisheries to go after the sharks. Well, at the time, we didn't have the science to realize they kind of have what we call the life history or the pattern of how they perpetuate of elephants. Let's say, they're very slow to mature. They don't have many young. It's not something that can handle industrialized fishing. They just can't rebound or replenish that quickly. And that's what was happening. And so anyway, in the meantime, there was sort of this land-based shark fishery developing, particularly off the Padre Island National Seashore, where you're really having big game fishing literally from the dry sand. They're casting out or kayaking baits out. And this group was really formed by a guy named Billy Sandefurs, passed away. He was kind of called the Padre of Padre, meaning Padre Island.
Yeah.
And he really started preaching conservation, and he had strung up his fair share of huge sharks for the pictures, and everything that you see in those old photographs.
It's funny that you say that, because there's a classic photograph of Billy with, I guess, a client and this huge,
tiger shark. Yeah.
And in that photo, he's not smiling.
Yeah.
I've
never noticed that.
The client is smiling, but he's not smiling.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that was just Billy. I only know Billy a little bit, but I think my guess is that he wasn't happy having to take that big shark.
Well, later in the beginning, he was,
sure,
let's kill them all. That's how everyone, remember Jaws was there. It was like an ocean with less sharks is a good thing.
Yeah.
All that. And so that sort of had our mindsets as we need to remove these predators, which now, of course, we realize is the last thing you want to do for a healthy ocean. And so he went from really, let's kill them all, to like, we've got to release every possible one we can kind of thing. And so that spurred cleanup events and all kind of things. And an outgrowth of that was the Sharkathon, which has turned out in the Guinness Book of World Records, the largest land-based shark tournament. And we saw that as opportunity that the anglers there became very conservation minded. In fact, they kind of through peer pressure forced other tournaments to convert to catch and release, or those tournaments kind of went away and they kind of became the
because it was a kill
pinnacle.
tournament.
And sharks ended up in dumpsters afterwards, crazy kind of stuff. And so quickly people realized that it's just not something we need to be doing, and recognizing the value of sharks in the ocean and all of that. Well, anyway, they started this catch and release tournament, and we worked closely with them to say, well, God, they're so rare to begin with. What if we use all that manpower and all that effort that we never could do? We never have the resources or money or manpower to begin tagging these sharks. And so we developed a citizen science program, and now we've tagged thousands. Well, just last weekend it occurred. And they tagged a record 200, close to almost 300 sharks, I think 270, something like that.
Wow. Tagged and released.
And now part of the rules are you have to have one of our heart tags in the shark to get credit along with a picture of
huge.
it. So
that's a huge
change.
So
I don't have the exact numbers after this weekend, but we'll be approaching 10,000 sharks that they've tagged. There's just no way we could have.
So it went from an all kill tournament to a no-kill tournament to a now you have to put a tag and release that shark.
On the Sharkathon weekend, and even since then, I mean, in the past few years, there's the Texas Shark Rodeo, which is a sort of separate tournament that goes year-round. And so you win by however many inches of shark you catch throughout the year. And same thing, throughout the year, you have to have a tag. So you have to have a photograph with a special ruler, and part of the rules, you have to have a tag in those sharks. And so anyway, what's nice about that is now not only do we have just a weekend high effort after the sharks. We have a year-round tagging, and these anglers are just out of control, supportive, and they can't get enough tag. They're all in, and of course they love to be part of the process and all that. So.
Yeah. A big part of what we do here at HRI is get involved. Right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in terms of the chairs and the staff, not just do science for science sake, but do something with it. And you have been a great example of that. So can you talk about some of the work that you've done outside of the Institute that has impacted management decisions around fisheries?
Yeah. And so, we just, sort of my philosophy and just interest has always been to do work that had a real practical meaning, or there was some utility, direct utility for management or fishery science or just natural resource management in general. And so that was maybe why I think, it's been such a good fit here at the Institute, is because that's also our mission, to ensure that our science, we're doing world-class quality science at the Institute, but also that is taken to the next level and implemented into policy or some type of management action. Mm-hmm. So one way to do that in the past leadership and through your leadership and others is for us to be very engaged in the process. And so that means a lot of travel and a lot of work. It's not easy, but at the same time, we're very passionate. So we're more than happy to do that, but serve on committees and groups to ensure that the science is taken to the next level. So we serve in leadership roles. For example, the Texas Parks and Wildlife Department has a Coastal Resources Advisory Committee that we sit on, and now some new chairs will actually be moving in on that as well. Here, Jenny Pollock will be on that. That group advises the commission. Of course, we advise them in a scientific capacity, but there's other constituents. Yeah. So that's a good example. The other is, so I'm a member of the Gulf of Mexico Fishery Management Council, and that's a governor appointed and Secretary of Commerce appointment to manage federal fisheries in the Gulf of Mexico. And that's quite a challenge, but we're right in the middle of that. And of course, we're a direct conduit to get science into that process. Yeah. So that's really important for us. And each chair does very similar things in different capacities. So we work hard to be on high impact committees that influence natural resource management.
Right.
So that's one way. Then, of course, the other way through the Sportfish Center is that's a major mission, what we call angler engagement, which means, engaging anglers in the scientific process. That can be as simple as the tagging we were talking about as Sharkathon, but also through our Release Sense program, which is like Release Makes Sense, Release Sense. It's a partnership with Shimano and the Coastal Conservation Association, where we teach anglers to be wise stewards of the resource. If we don't preach by any means, you should not retain fish to eat at some level, because that's an important cultural aspect of the sport. Yeah. So we want to encourage that. But nowadays, many people want to practice catch and release and just keep a few for dinner. Well, what's the real science behind that? You want your fish to survive. And so we teach ways to do that, from catching, fish in inches of water, like redfish, for example, to, hundreds of feet of water, where you have to have different techniques to ensure that those fish might survive that are coming up from deeper water. And that's what the Release Sense program. So that's a way we can influence the general public. And then as well in the other realm, in the other hats that we're wearing institutionally, we're serving on state and federal agency type programs.
So let's go back to the Release Sense for a moment. So what is, and different species, maybe different ways that you would want to release, but let's talk about redfish. What's the best way to catch the redfish? You get a photograph, and then you want to release it, but what's that process looks like?
Yeah, well, the great news is almost all inshore species, trout, redfish, flounder, black drum, all the popular ones, they are exceptionally hardy, and they have very, very high survival rates, really 90%. In fact, we had trouble in our controls. It's like if you handle them properly, they just don't die, which is a great thing.
So how do you handle? What's the proper
so the what we recommend, you get them in quickly. There's no problem snapping a picture. We heavily recommend boga grips, which are lip gripping tools, which minimize handling. You want to keep the slime layer on the fish. That's their sort of immune system and their protection kind of thing. But even that is not that big of a deal. The one thing that causes mortality is the hooking location.
Yeah.
So we did all kind of studies looking at where they're hooked in the eyes and the gills and the externally. Well, it turns out if they've swallowed the hook, that's where there's a problem.
Yeah.
And it turns out of all those species, you have about 90% survivorship. We went from a catch and release mortality to catch and release survivorship study because they all lived. But about 10% of your fish, where you get the 90% from, the 10% of the fish that don't make it have swallowed the hook. And
Just too deep.
whether you pull it out, whether you clip it off, it's pretty much those fish aren't going to make it. So it's a good, it's a good thing to know, because if you're going to keep a fish, well, you probably want to keep the ones that have swallowed the hook if you're thinking about keeping a few for dinner.
As long as they're in the limit.
Well, of course, yeah. We have regulatory you want to pay attention to, but as long as they're within the current limitations of your size and bag limits, of course, that's fine. So that's just a real practical example of how you can do it. But in reality, it's just, minimizing the time of that fish out of the water and getting it back and snapping a few photos. We got criticized early on. We held them in cages, but technology advanced where we could put electronic tags in them. Yeah. So we've caught them, done a small surgery, stitched them up and released them and let them fend, for themselves in the wild after heavily handling through surgeries and everything. This is trout, redfish, black drum, the whole suite of them.
So let's talk about your tagging efforts for a little bit, because you've done this inshore. You talked a little bit about the passive tags for sharks, but you also have these satellite tags that you deploy. So can you talk about your tagging program just writ large?
Yeah, so the tagging, the technology, David, we've got at our hands is just astonishing in the last 10 years, and it gets better and better. We're just like anything, we're in a rapid state of developing, electronic capacities to do things. And so we started off with the dart tags. Many people know you stick a dart tag into the fish. You have to release that fish and rely on someone else to catch it and then return your tag. Yeah. Of course, that's simple and cheap. They're about $1 a piece or less. But of course, you only know where that fish was released and where it was recovered again. Well, new technology came along where we could implant acoustic tags into the fish that send out a sound signal. And they're more expensive, but it requires you implant the tag into the body cavity with a small stitch. But what's nice is they can swim around and you have listening stations. And so you get more of a funny thing that we noticed from that tagging study is we'd put a dart tag in and the fish would be caught in a really popular fishing area and tagged and caught again in nearly the exact same spot. Traditionally, you would have said, well, that fish didn't move much because it turned out with our electronic tag, and it moved 70 miles in the past month before it was recaptured. It just happened to be recaptured right on the, we don't know why that is. They're natal homing or something, who knows? But the point is that has a lot more information. And of course, then the next thing came along, which was satellite tagging, which it requires a little bit larger fish, and we attach them to the dorsal fin of sharks or implant them in other fish such as cobia or what we call ling. And we follow them around through satellite networks, and globally you can track them. And so that's the really high end. That's kind of the cool factor that everyone, you can open your smartphone and see where your favorite shark is today, kind of thing. So that's some really powerful technology, especially for these migratory fish that may swim out of an acoustic array, your listening array, and literally you track them anywhere on the planet. On a daily basis.
How long do those satellite tags last?
We program them to do different things, but generally about a year to 3 years, depending upon the battery. It's all about battery life.
Sure.
And keeping the tag in. Of course, the tags routinely come out, and electronics and salt water don't always mesh,
they don't work well together.
So they might malfunction or whatever, but the data you get is worth, the little glitches that you have. And so it's pretty amazing. I mean, our mako sharks that winter right now, they're showing up as we speak off the Texas coast. They might have been up in the Northeast off New England or deep down in the Caribbean, and they come and go almost to the same spots year after year, which you never would have been able to really tell that with a dart tagging. You might have gotten lucky and that sort of thing, but we can look at real directed movement patterns with these satellite tags.
Yeah.
So,
we talk about science to solutions here at HRI, and then that final step is really about the implementation. You are on the implementation side with serving on the Fisheries Management Council.
Yep.
Right. So that you are implementing policy, right? I mean, you are making decisions about how we manage our federal fisheries. I'm going to be moving to Texas Parks and Wildlife Department here in a few weeks, which is an implementation, management agency. How do you see us continuing to work together as I move on into my new position and as you step into the executive director role here at the Institute? I mean, what is the benefit of me moving on in this grander scheme of managing our natural and living resources?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of great news there in that realm. And that's obviously a really broad question, but there's some really positive aspects to that. I've been telling people, of course, there's a little bit of shock when you announce that move and that sort of thing. But I've been telling people, in reality, whatever real positions we're in, we're really all part of the same team, the broader team that's managing natural resources. We all really want the same thing in general. And so really wherever we're at there, we still can have a big impact. And of course, the good thing about Texas Parks and Wildlife is the Institute has well-established relationships that go back well before even our times here at the Institute. But since then, we formed direct relationships with not only the commissioners, but also the scientists and the different groups within the agency. I can't think of a chair here at the Institute that doesn't have some linkage, almost direct linkage to Parks and Wildlife, particularly folks like Mike Wetz with his water quality, of course, Jenny and her habitat, and our work with the fisheries and many, many others. So there's a lot of...
I work with water on the
of course, water, Paul. I mean,
absolutely.
it's just, go down the list. There's, I mean, we've been very, very great partners. We've got a great relationship. We provide a big service for the agency, in my opinion. They're very busy doing the work that they do as they're charged with by the state and will be under your direction. But many times they don't have the time or resources to do the science that's needed. So we that's where we can play a role. And so back to your question is, now that you're going to be able to see the details and the inner workings of each group, and you'll be able to see where those synergies are. And so I can't imagine that we'll have even better relationships and abilities to generate the science that you're going to need to make the most informed decisions for the state of Texas.
Well, and that's if you look at TPWD's strategic plan, goal number one, and there's a reason it's goal number one, is to do and integrate the best available science for management. Yeah. And I'm paraphrasing there. Yeah. But and I think that's that's an important part of me stepping into this role now. I mean, Carter has done a great job of bringing that forward, but I know that's, really important to the commission. And so I think that, me stepping into that role, I'm going to be able to look at through that lens for the entire agency. And I like the way that you frame this, is that, there's this conservation enterprise, right, that exists out there, and there's the academic science, there's the implementing agencies, there's the environmental NGOs, right, but they're all part of this conservation enterprise. And it just happens to be that I'm moving from this part of the enterprise to another part of the enterprise. And I think not to talk too long about me in particular, but I think Ed Hart, and with the vision of that original advisory council, this kind of completes that arc.
Yeah,
the science to the solution to the implementation.
And I think he'd be very proud of that. I mean, the decisions that you're going to have to make in that new role in your team, have to be grounded in good science. I mean, as you're saying, that's why that's the number one thing. Now the decisions always go with what. If we went with science, that'd be easy. You wouldn't need advisory panels. You wouldn't need a commission. But there's obviously the whole human dimension side that comes into that, and that's where it really gets sticky. In fact, Kacho, one of our, as you well know, one of our lead team members around here, just sent me an email yesterday in class. They were talking about, we need more science on this committee because it never happens. The decisions never get based on science. And I was like, you need to have me come talk, because science, of course, I'm a believer in science, but and why I think you're going to be so good in this new position is that you understand that human side. You understand the social and economic implications of decisions. So a commissioner, for example, might know that the best science is to do A, but all of a sudden there's people's livelihoods, there's the economics of the state to consider, and a whole host of other things. And so together, all those come together to make whatever decision is made. But in the end, if you don't have that good science, you're really, you could be making some decisions like what we just started with, having a flounder size limit that's too low before they even reproduce.
Right. Exactly.
And so you need the basic science to say, well, wait a minute, the minimum has to be at least this to, perpetuate the species. But anyway, so So I think having that depth of expertise and really what the Institute here is about is having, a broad interdisciplinary approach to problems is going to really be beneficial overall. So
I'm looking forward to it. As we close out here, Greg, so this is the original Fishery Bulletin 89. You know
I
about
know
this,
that,
right?
yeah.
You know this.
Yeah.
Gulf of Mexico, its origin, waters, and marine life. So this back in 1959, 54. So look at the thickness of that. That's about maybe 1.5 inches. That was all that was really known about the Gulf of Mexico back in 1954, right?
Yeah.
And West Tunnel led the effort to redo this. Back in, I think they finally finished the whole series maybe in about 2010, 2012, something like that.
Realm,
which the whole series then was about this big.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So a lot more that we have learned about the Gulf of Mexico, and of course much more every day. Larry McKinney passed this on to me when I became executive director. And so now I am passing this on to you.
Well, thank you.
To hold on to it and share that with the next executive director.
All right. Well, thanks, Dave.
Yeah.
That's great, and I will do the same. And that's good to keep a document like this that's torn and ragged, and to say this is what our origins are. Of course, now the science, as I mentioned, is developing so rapidly. We could this will even grow more and more. I'm sure.
Absolutely. So we always close this out. This is the second podcast, but we're closing this out with a series of questions. These final questions have been partially adapted from James Lipton, who was the host of the Actors Studio, and he would always ask his guests a series of questions at the end. So you have not had these questions given to you beforehand.
Okay.
So I'm going to ask several. So the first one, what was the first impactful interaction with the great outdoors that you remember?
God, I distinctly remember as a child, fishing for perch, what we call a brim, sunfish, that bobber going down, that little red and white bobber, and that
and you were hooked.
Still burned in my brain to this day. You know, that no matter if you're catching a 1,000-pound mako or a 4-ounce, bluegill,
right?
That bobber going down still just sort of.
What did you use? A piece of cheese?
A worm.
A worm.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
What sound or noise do you hate?
Oh, that's a good one. You're putting me on the spot.
Don't think
here
too
now,
hard.
So I'm thinking too hard. So, traffic.
Traffic. Okay, that works. That works.
Yeah.
Okay, what sound or noise do you love?
Oh, peacefulness of the outdoors, no sound.
Or the wind, or
the
rustle of the
ocean
wind.
on a calm morning as you're out there.
Yeah.
So.
What is your least favorite word?
Can't.
Okay. What is your favorite word?
Can.
All right. Okay. What excites you about the future?
Well, the attitude that I'm seeing changing, if we talk about recreational fisheries, where I focus, and the stewardship and the conservation minded of the young anglers coming up, I think we're in good shape. Those folks coming up want to do the right thing. They understand the resource. They love the resource, which is what you have to have in fishing or hunting.
Right.
You don't have those people that truly love the resource and are willing to give back. But this new generation coming up is all about conservation and stewardship. So that's
good.
Very good thing.
And last question, what other profession would you rather be in? than the one you're in now. You can't talk. You can't say, well, I'd rather be. What other one would you rather be?
I always thought I wanted to be an armchair theoretical physicist. That sits there and thinks about space, or
this big
the
old
theory
beard.
of relativity. Yeah. So I've always thought about that. But yeah. So
anyway. Theoretical physicist.
That's right.
All right. Good. Yeah. Great
All
talking
right.
with you, man.
Great doing this, Dave, and good luck with your new position.
Thank you.
We're all happy for you.
Thanks for listening to the Gulf Stream. If you enjoyed this episode, you can help make a difference in the Gulf by contributing to the Hart Research Institute for Gulf of Mexico Studies research and efforts to create healthier coastal and marine ecosystems. Visit hartresearch.org. That's HARTE research.org for more information. Please note, the views and opinions expressed by guests of the Gulf Stream do not necessarily reflect the views of the Hart Research Institute for Gulf of Mexico Studies or Texas A&M University Corpus Christi. It is our mission to be an honest broker, providing only science-based solutions to Gulf of Mexico problems and other environmental issues. This podcast is intended to provide our guests with a safe and open forum for them to express themselves freely.